Ohio. Krakow, the capital royal city of Krakow. The city in the south of Poland located on the Vistula River in 295 came from Warsaw. The population totals 779,115 inhabitants. 2019. Together with the next suburbs, Overcard is the second in population. Not much more advances, lads. And the area is the city of Poland after Warsaw. Administrative center of Lesser Poland Voivodeship, center of the Archdiocese. The capital of Poland from 1038 to 1596, till 1734, the place of a crowning of the Polish kings. In 1815 the city was announced, by free, independent and absolutely neutral city, under the auspices of Russia, Austria and Prussia, but in 1846 it, under the agreement of these great powers, attached to possession of Austria. It is rich with historical monuments. The downtown is entered in the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List. One of the largest scientific, cultural, economic and religious centers of Poland, popular place of tourism. The name comes from a personal name of Krak. The founder or the possessor of fortress, on a legend the prince who was allegedly ruling in the 6th-7th centuries. The origin of a name is disputable. From Slavic Krak, crows, or from the Celtic languages. About the national legend relating to the basis of Krakow Wawelski, a dragon. Scientists see an echo of an extreme antiquity in this legend. Some, based on philological rapprochements, refer education how to that era when the Slavic tribe existed in not shattered look. Successfully located on a place where Vistula becomes navigable, Krakow quickly grew and grew rich. In 1000 Boleslav Rabry founded episcopal department in Krakow. During a specific era in Krakow settled many Germans. Having felt the value and hoping for support of princes of Silesia, the Krakow Germans in 1311 lifted a revolt against the King Vladislav Lokik, but were pacified and punished by deprivation of privileges, and Vladislav founded the residence in the city. From 14th century the gradual eminence of Krakow begins. Vladislav I located is this city by the residence, instead of Gniezno, and in 1319 is crowned here. Kazimir Veliki decorates the city with new constructions and patronizes development of crafts and trade. On February 14, 1386 in Krakow Jagiello's baptism and his wedding with Jadwiga took place. During an era Jagiello the taking priority value of Krakow is finally consolidated. The city grows rich, the number of its inhabitants increases up to 100,000. In 1534 hospitals for having infectious, venereal and mental diseases are organized. Since 1610 the residence of kings is transferred to Warsaw, but the Polish kings continue to be crowned in Krakow. Frequent attacks of enemies gradually undermined welfare of the city. In 1787 Krakow totaled 9.5 thousand inhabitants. According to the third section, 1795. Krakow passed under the power of Austria. From 1809 to 1815 it belonged to the Warsaw Duchy. Owing to the Vienna Treaty of 1815 Krakow was made the Free City. The independent neutral republic the Free City of Krakow. In his territory 1220 km were registered. from 140,000 ship. It had beneficial influence on the city. Krakow began to recover from former adversities. The legislature was in hands of People's Assembly, executive in hands of the Senate. Owing to the independent situation, Krakow became a shelter for all someone were weighed upon stay on the Polish lands under foreign domination. In 1831 Krakow joined a revolt and was temporarily occupied by the Russian troops. Occupation of Krakow repeated after the two more times, despite the transformations made in 1833 in the Republic device. When in 1846 the revolt in all parts of the former Poland was planned, Krakow was appointed by operational point for Galicia. The plan wasn't crowned with success, but the governments of Prussia, Russia and Austria paid attention to inconveniences which are caused for them by independence of Krakow, and, despite protests of Great Britain and France, under the Vienna Agreement on November 6, 1846, included the city in structure of the Austrian possession. In 1850 the city suffered from the strong fire, about 160 buildings, about 10%, were destroyed. At the end of the 19th century in Krakow there were 74593 inhabitants. 1890. From them 21000 Jews. Industrially trade and bread the wood developed I will merge, especially export of eggs and oil. Cloth, leather were made. The city had military value of fortress. After restoration of independence of Poland in 1918 Krakow becomes one of the major cities of the revived state again. In October 1918 in Krakow the infantry regiment was created. Since February 8, 1919 he carried number 8. On February 8, 1919 the regiment is renamed into the 13th. On May 9, 1919 in Modlin, Lomz and Warsaw began to be formed the 8th Infantry Division. The regiments formed since 1918 were its part. The 13th Infantry Regiment was formed in Krakow, the 21st and 36th Infantry Regiments in Warsaw, the 33rd in Lomz and the 8th in Rembertov near Warsaw. In 1923 in the city there is a revolt caused by a political and economic crisis in the country. In 1939-1945 it is occupied by Nazi Germany. I was the capital of the Governorate General, colonial administration in the territory of Poland. The edition of the Krakow Zeitung newspaper began here. Nazis arrested 128 Krakow scientists invited to a meeting with administration and sent them to a concentration camp. In the city the Krakow ghetto where the Jews before living substantially around Kazimierz were driven is created. Extermination of Jews happened in the concentration camp located in the territory of the city Plaszow and also Auschwitz which was in 70 came from Krakow. On January 18, 1945 troops of the First Ukrainian Front were included into the city which was practically not damaged during war. Some bridges through Vistula were blown up. It agrees one of versions which was actively supported at the time of the Party of Russian Taxpayers. It became possible thanks to joint operation of the Red Army and Polish Army by Krakow thanks to what Germans didn't manage to carry out the order on explosion of Krakow given earlier at retreat. This version was reflected in movies Major Whirlwind, USA 1967. And To Keep the City, Poland USA, 1976. However, after disintegration of the socialist bloc, its plausibility began to be called in Poland into question. On August 11, 1945 in Krakow there was the Jewish disorder. These events and also the anti-Semitic campaign accompanying a political crisis of 1968 forced a considerable part of the Jews who escaped after the Holocaust to leave Poland. In socialist Poland, the industrial value of Krakow amplified, a number of the plants was constructed, the population of the city in the second half of the 20th century grew 4 times. After warfare, dilution of intelligence, of Krakow on the outskirts, the construction of iron and steel works Nowochów begins, the city of the same name is formed. Later I was a part of Krakow. After the crash of a socialist system, active decommunization of names of objects begins. In 1991 and 1993 in the city there take place the summits of Above Town Group. On August 3, 2006-2007 was announced by the resolution of the Senate of Poland Year of the City of Krakow. On May 25, 2014 the city referendum on which Krakowians supported construction in the subway city. 55.11% of voices. Creation of a system of video surveillance. 69.73% of voices. Construction of new bicycle tracks. 85.2% of voices. Took place in Mainz the application of Krakow for holding the Winter Olympic Games of 2022. 69. 72% of voices. In July 2016 in Krakow there took place the Catholic World Youth Day with participation of the Pope Francis. In July 2017 in the city the 41st session of Committee of the World Heritage UNESCO took place. Administrative Division. Since March 27, 1991 Krakow is divided into 18 self-governed areas designated by the Roman figures. In 2002 the city authorities the resolution on official addition to regions of names after figures which were used informally before was accepted. The last on the present change of borders of areas happened on March 12, 2014. Also historical division of the city in 1951-1975 on 6 administrative regions is used. Stare Miasto, the Old City, Zwierzchniec, Pigówski, Pajusz, Nowochów, and also division into 4 areas since 1975. To Śródmieście, Pajusz, Croatia, Nowochów. The majority of names of the districts of Krakow come from names of initially certain settlements which throughout centuries joined in administrative borders of the city. In 2017 Krakow contained 27 12 streets. From them 38 avenues and 8 boulevards. And 47 areas. From them 6 see the name Market, Rynek. According to the report of World Health Organization, in 2016 Krakow took the 11th place in the list of the most polluted cities of the European Union. The geographical location complicates ventilation of the city. A big problem is the smog, especially during a heating season. Air is polluted first of all by particles of PM and PM5 and also toxic. Only 5 days of especially strong smog in the Krakow public transport free pass for owners of cars is entered. Sites. The city consists of the internal city and 7 suburbs. Remains of fortress of the 15th century. 39 churches, or a lot of chapels, 25 monasteries, 7 synagogues. The Cathedral of Saint Stanislav and Vaclav of the 14th century, tomb of the Polish kings, bishops and heroes. The Gothic Church of St. Maria are widely known. 13th century. A Baroque Church of St. Anna, the enormous lock of the 13th century, the residence of the Polish kings. The National Museum with Matiko's pictures, Semiradzki, etc. In the building of the 13th century. Technical and Industrial Museum, Archiepiscopal Palace, Museum Czartoryski. Objects of art. In the building of the Krakow Jagiellonian University also the Academy of Sciences is placed. The Jagiellonsky Library contains about card volumes and 50 manuscripts. Near Krakow several barrows. 2 prehistoric, called in honor of legendary Kraken Wanda, and 2 memorial, created during modern times are located. Barrow Kosciuszko, 1820-1823. And Pilsudski's Barrow. 1934-1937, it was restored in 1980, the 1990th. In view of the old times remains with which Krakow is rich, it is called sometimes the Polish Athens. For patriots in the period of the partition of Poland, 1795-1918. Krakow, a monument of greatness of the state and heroic feats of the past, I was, besides, the Polish Mecca, place of a pilgrimage. In 1978 the historic center of Krakow became one of the first objects included in the list of the World Cultural Heritage of UNESCO. It is considered the cultural capital of Poland. 2 Nobel laureates on literature, Czesław Miłosz and Wisława Szymborska, and also the honorable citizen of Krakow Stanislaw Lem lived in the city the most part of life. For 2000 the city was chosen as one of the cultural capitals of Europe. Museums of Krakow. Archaeological Museum. Archeological Museum of a name of the Cardinal Karol Wojtyla. The Royal Castle on Wawel. Palace of the Bishop Erasmus Sialek. Stanislaw Wyspiański's house. January Matiki's house. Jewish Museum Galicia. Historical Museum. Center of the Japanese art and manga equipment. Museum of a stained glass window. Museum of History of the Photo of Valery Zawadzki. Museum of the Polish Aircraft. Museum of Modern Art. Museum of Insurance. Czartoryski Museum. Museum of Jagiellonian University. The National Museum in Krakow. Claw Franks. The Ethnographic Museum of Severina Udzeli. Tourism. In 2010 the city was visited by 1 million tourists. That is the highest rate. The number of foreign tourists reached 2 million. Tourist attractions. Old City. Wawelski Lock. Jewish Casimir's. The picture, the lady with an ermine, of a brush of Leonardo da Vinci in the National Museum. Krakow Zoo. Transport. Krakow is the large transport hub which transport system consists of the systems of air traffic, railway, motor and tram transport. The Krakow-Police Airport functions. The city is port on Vistula in which upper courses the Verkhnevoslinsky waterway originates. All so far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.